Do you understand why you did what you did?
It's kind of a confluence of unusual events. Screwed up upbringing, crazy years sitting in a cell in the department, no help, make me change my behavior, meeting up with a serial rapist and deciding I would try and see if a little fantasy entertainment would work.
Once again, it's Murder and Mayhem Monday. Welcome back. My name is Franklin James, the serial author, and I do hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving. But I also hope you're ready to strap in because this podcast is part 2 of the Toolbox Killers, Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris. Now, in part 1, I wanted to provide you guys with some context by examining their upbringing and decision-making, which led them down the path they chose. And in this video, I want to focus more on their methodology, victimology, and psychopathy. Now let's get into it. All right, so Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris were organized predatory offenders with sadistic tendencies. They planned their crimes meticulously, selecting and stalking their victims. And their pair dynamic was more of a dominant-submissive relationship, which defined their partnership and friendship as a whole. Now, Lawrence Bittaker was the dominant sadistic mastermind who enjoyed control and inflicting maximum pain. For him, it was about the ultimate assertion of dominance and power over the victims, knowing he held their lives in his hands. Roy Norris, on the other hand, was the submissive participant, motivated by sexual gratification and easily influenced by Bittaker's leadership, which makes sense because Lawrence Bittaker had a high IQ and he enjoyed being in control. Not to mention he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. So I'm sure it didn't take much for him to get Roy Norris on board in the first place. But what I found interesting is that while in prison, they both bonded over fantasies of rape and torture. So yeah, the rehabilitation process was going real well. Now, their crimes were committed in Southern California, often in remote areas like the San Gabriel Mountains, where they could avoid detection. And they targeted hitchhikers, capitalizing off the hitchhiking culture of the late 1970s. Their victims were young, vulnerable females, primarily teenagers who could be easily overpowered and abducted. And sadly, they were subjected to prolonged physical and psychological torture, which was often recorded by Bittaker and Norris so that they could relive the experience of what they were doing to those poor girls over and over again. They found it gratifying and exciting, which is just sick and twisted. Those recordings were their trophies. Now, the victims were also restrained and transported in a van they nicknamed Murder Mac, which also served as a mobile torture chamber, which is further proof of how organized they were. And the bodies of their victims were left in isolated areas, making it difficult for anyone to locate them. And unfortunately, not all the victims were discovered. And they used common tools such as pliers, ice picks, and sledgehammers as torture instruments, which is why they were dubbed the Toolbox Killers. But what ended their 5-month reign of torture was, of all things, Roy Norris's inability to keep his mouth shut. Apparently, Norris reconnected with an old friend and began telling that person everything he had been doing with Bittaker, as well as their future plans for girls. And that information just didn't sit right, so that friend reported them to the police. And thankfully, that friend did. I mean, who knows how long they would have remained active or how many innocent lives they would have taken. I mean, these two were sadistic. Both derived pleasure from the suffering of their victims. For Bittaker, this was about control and dominance, and for Norris, he was just sexually motivated. And despite the high risk of their crimes, right, the public abductions, their confidence and desire for thrills overrode any caution or threat of being caught. But in the end, both displayed psychopathic traits, such as lack of empathy, superficial charm, and manipulation. However, Lawrence Bittaker was more calculating and controlled, whereas Roy Norris, he was just more impulsive, which led to their 5-month reign of terror, but it also led to its end as well. And they'll forever be known as the Toolbox Killers. But I thank you guys for tuning in. And I do ask that you stab that like button and subscribe Leave a comment and let me know what you guys think about the Toolbox Killers. Share this video out there, smash that bell for notifications, and if possible, avoid mayhem.